In what world would me, his wife, not get access to his room? And she just kind of looked at him and said, do you really want me to answer that in front of all these people in line? Jessica, when I tell you that when I told my followers, so I always say, hey, I'm doing all these podcast episodes, or I'm doing these themes of podcast episodes next. Let me know if you have stories you want me to tell, but also see if you can try to guess who I'm going to meet. And the moment I said hotel workers, I got so many. It's Jessica Vanel. I'm like, yes, you know it is. It's Jessica Vanel.
It's like, where's Waldo? But we know. We
know.
We see Waldo. Waldo is right there.
We can guess with all the others, but we know this one is Jessica Vanel. So hi, Jessica.
Hi, hello. It's great to be here. It's great to be back on the team.
For anyone that is used to my content, they know you because we do stuff. Whenever we're in Florida together, we're together.
Yes. Yes.
But for those of you who do not, Jessica, what is your specialty? What is your field?
Well, my field is mainly making skits about customer service and Karens, and with a particular hotel flavoring, because I worked in hotels for 7+ years, and I've worked at all ranges of hotels. Worked at a giant convention hotel. I worked at a giant luxury hotel. Worked at a very small boutique luxury hotels. This one was 100 rooms rather than 1,000.
Wow.
And then I worked for the most magical place on earth, which has about 25 hotels. And I worked at 13 of those.
Wow.
Wow. So I have a lot of hotel experience under my belt, and what I love is that I do have such a wide range of experience with different business model types, because of course all those different types of hotels cater to different types of travelers. You have the vacationers, you have the business travelers, the convention, and so I got to meet and interact with a lot of different people coming for a lot of different reasons.
Okay, so start from the beginning. When someone wants to work at a hotel, it's obviously called the hospitality field, which I've learned a lot of people do not know.
Right. When I told people I was studying hospitality as my major, they were like, oh, so you're going to work like at hospitals? I was like, no.
When you say you majored in hospitality, what does that mean?
So hospitality people think of hospitality and they say, why do you have to get a degree for that? It's just working in a hotel. It's working in a theme park. It's working in a restaurant. You don't need an education to do that. But you do. This is a giant, major, global, one of the biggest businesses in the world, like one of the most huge industries. And when I say to hospitality management, there were a few different tracks we could take. You could take a hotel track, you could take a theme park track, you could take a restaurant track, you could take a golf clubs.
Oh, wow.
That is part of hospitality, is working in these private clubs at these different golf courses in these specialized locations. Or what I did is I studied in general hospitality. I majored in learning a little bit of everything, putting my finger in every pie. So I learned about running and working in restaurants. I learned about theme parks and what goes into running those, and hotels. And the hotels ended up being what I found the most enjoyment with and the most of a home in. Because the thing with restaurants and theme parks, you usually see people, restaurants, obviously you can have a lot of regulars and return people, but you see them for a few hours and then they're gone. Same with theme parks. You might have someone come up to you at a theme park and say, hey, I'm having this issue, and you tell them to go to guest services and you never see them again.
Right.
But with hotels, you can have someone come up to you with a situation, you can own it. And with a lot of people who come and stay at hotels, especially business hotels, they continue to come back. And so you can build up a relationship with them. And I've even made a skit about a person who came in and she said, hey, I'm checking in. And the front desk agent was like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Anderson, it's great to see you again. Oh my goodness, though, we didn't know you were coming. And she's like, yeah, no, it was a very last minute business trip. And the front desk agent's like, okay, well, we don't have your usual room available for you. And Mrs. Anderson, that was a skit that was a little bit of personal experience and a lot of hearing about these stories of other people sharing their experiences with some guests who they come so often that they feel like they own that room. And if there's another guest in it, it just...
I did see that. When she went to the room.
She went to the room.
Was like...
Yes.
I need you to get out of my room. Yes. This is my room. Yes. That is crazy.
And the thing is, what's so hilarious is when I make these stories and I tell these stories and I make these skits, I'll have some people who comment and be like, there's no way that actually happens.
No.
I'll have people like 2 comments down who will say, oh my gosh, this exactly
this happened last week. That's so funny. Like anytime I post any kind of skit from any occupation, like, no one does this. And I'm like, do you not read the other 15 comments that are like, this happened to me last week. That was my mom. Like, that was...
God. When I made that skit too, my bonus mom even turned to me and she said that she used to stay at this one hotel all the time. And they did usually put her in the same room. And one time they didn't. And she didn't really care. She wasn't attached to that room in that way. But when she was going to her room at the end of the workday, she wandered up to the stairs and she went to the usual door and she kept tapping the key card. And she was like, why isn't this this isn't my room this time. Oh my gosh. I probably just freaked out whoever is in there. I'm running away. And she went to her room.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. But she just got used to the pattern.
Yeah.
And she got used to going. And people don't realize that there are people who
it's like a home away from home.
Yeah,
especially when you work and you're constantly traveling and familiar.
There are people who spend more time in hotels in a year than they do in their own beds. I work for a Marriott resort and Ambassador Elite is the highest tier you can reach. You have to spend more nights in the hotel in a year than at your own home. I think to reach Ambassador Elite, you need somewhere between 150, 200. I'm probably getting that wrong.
Wow.
Someone who is an Ambassador Elite, I'm sure will comment and tell me exactly how many nights or points
that
you
sounds
need.
awful. Yeah. I could not be away from my cat that long.
I know. Oh my god, baby.
Oh my god, like I'm only gone for 4 days this week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go home and miss like I'm on night 1, and I'm like, I want Milo.
I know, I'm only gone for a night, and I'm like, oh my god, he probably misses me.
Oh, so you worked front desk?
Yes.
Does everyone at hotels who work front desk, do they all have a degree in hospitality, or is it something that's just preferred?
So here's the thing that's tricky with the the hospitality degree. It's not, I would say, entirely necessary ever for even, I know people who became hotel general managers. Like they ran the entire hotel. They probably had a high school education.
Okay.
You know, like it's
accessible.
The degree is great for understanding the psychology and a lot of the business, like why decisions are made for like and the type of hotels that exist and what they offer. It's great for a lot of baseline knowledge and a lot of practice with financials and understanding what makes the entire hotel run.
Okay.
But
so it's helpful, but it's not necessary.
Not at all.
So it's like an accessible kind of career.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's wonderful. And a lot of it does, of course, like any job, depend on the politics of your workplace.
Right.
You know, like I knew plenty of people who went into the workplace and they had degrees and they're like, why am I not getting promoted? What's happening? Why am I not moving up? And it's like, well, because you're not making the effort. And you're not actually showing a drive. You just think that because you have a degree, you can show up at the workplace and just coast and nothing happens. Like you have to show that willingness to learn, that eagerness to move around and move up. And you have to network. You have to actually talk to your leaders and your bosses, and you have to let them know this is my goal. And really good hospitality bosses and leaders will be excited and want to see you grow because there are so many hotels.
Yeah.
And especially if you work for a major chain, you could go global.
Yeah.
You could absolutely go global. I knew people who I worked with who went to Japan to open a hotel. They went to France, like all around the world to help open hotels and manage hotels in different areas.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fantastic job. And the funniest thing is that when I was in college, they told us that this is the fastest growing industry. You will always have a job in hospitality. It's never going to go away. You will always have a place to work. You're going to be set. And I graduated in 2018. Guess what happened in 2020?
Yeah. No one was traveling.
No one was working. I got laid off from my job. I was one of the last people to be laid off because at the time I was working the night shift. And I was one of the last to go because they needed someone to close up the hotel before it was time to shut down. And it was it was a really wild time for the industry.
Wow.
Because all of a sudden, these jobs and these positions that had never shown any sign of stopping, had always shown this exponential growth, gone. Poof.
That's so scary. Like,
Yeah.
that's so scary.
Yeah, and coming back was such a process.
Yeah.
Because, of course, people always need travel, and they need a place to stay.
Mhm.
When you travel, you need a place to
That's where we are right now.
That's where we are right now. Like, you need a place to rest your head when you
Right.
travel. So hotels and Airbnbs, which I'm personally not a big fan of, but like all these different places, like those were the first to come back
Right.
for travel because it's necessary. And it was such a weird process because a lot of hotels weren't bringing back regular housekeeping for obvious reasons.
Right.
Because you didn't want some stranger walking into your room and
Right.
touching things that other strangers have touched all over.
Right.
And there were people who were very understanding of that, and then people who were very upset about that.
Yes.
And wearing the masks. I'm sure anyone who has been on your podcast and talked about working in customer service when wearing masks, people just treated you like you weren't get treated like garbage, but you were treated like less than garbage.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the gum under someone's shoe because you couldn't see faces. And
Yeah, it like dehumanizes you a little
Yes,
bit. Yeah.
absolutely. So people will come up and just be absolute monsters. And you're looking at them like, I'm still a human behind the mask. I'm still a person.
Someone actually sent me a story of it was a woman. She was working front desk, and it was during COVID times, so she was wearing a mask, but it was still very obvious, that she was a woman,
Okay.
And there was an individual who had been staying a couple nights, and every day would just extend. And checkout was at 11, and it was now 10:45. Hadn't heard from him. He wasn't coming out of his room. Tried calling up to the room to say, hey, are you leaving today? Are you extending again? Like, we just need to know because checkout's coming. Nothing. Didn't hear from them. So at 11:05, she just, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to extend and charge card on file. Not 5-10 minutes later, this dude comes down. There's a mask mandate in place. It's like a state kind of mandate.
Yeah.
He's supposed to wear one. Doesn't have a mask on. Just starts yelling and screaming because you charged my card and blah, blah, and I didn't authorize that. Blah, who do you think that you are? And she said, first of all, I can't talk to you if you're not going to put a mask on. I don't need to put that mask on. Do you know who I am? Are you kidding? I pay your salary. I pay to stay at this hotel. And just starts yelling. And she's like, I didn't give you authorization to use my card. Why would you do that? Well, sir, checkout is at 11 o'clock. Well, I was still sleeping. Okay. Are you extending or are you checking out? Well, I'm extending. Okay, so why are you upset? And he just looks at her and he goes, I need to talk to your manager now. The manager comes out and manager goes, what's the problem? He goes, she can't speak to me like that. Are you kidding? Are you insane? Talking to me like I have to be on her time? Like I have to answer to her? She's a woman. I'm a man. I'm a man. And he just starts screaming, I'm a man. And no woman is going to tell me what I need to pay and tell me when I need to get up and tell me what I need to put on my face because I'm a man. And they just looked at him. The manager was also a dude too. And he goes, okay, well, she asked you if you were extending or staying, but I've decided that you're leaving.
Yes. Yes. Love those kind of managers.
And the guy goes, well, no, I'll extend. I just didn't like how she told me that I had to do it on her time and whatever. And she charged the card without asking me. And the manager said, no, she followed policy. You weren't out by a certain time, so we charged you for another night. Okay, but you don't like her asking the questions that she has to ask for her job. You don't like following our policies. That's fine. You can do that at another hotel, but you're not gonna be doing that here. Absolutely not. And we love managers.
We love managers who do that. We love managers who stand up because unfortunately, too often they don't.
Oh my God.
And especially because I love watching your podcast.
Thank you.
I know plenty of people who work in the service industry have said that so many people get away with abusing them because it's just part of the job.
Yes.
It's seen as an occupational hazard. But thankfully, especially with the rise of social media and with the rise of these discussions happening, and not to mention a lot of people refusing to take that abuse anymore and walking out of jobs where people, their managers do not have their backs. It's led to the rise of managers actually taking a stance against naughty guests.
Yes.
You're a bad child. You're misbehaving. You're out of here.
See,
we're not entertaining that.
I always assumed, and I could be so wrong, I always assumed that hospitality and hotels specifically was a place where managers kind of had to stand their ground a little more, because there are some situations that like they just can't fix because they want to keep someone happy. It's not a restaurant where you can just give someone another meal or give someone whatever. If you don't have rooms, you don't have rooms.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have housekeeping, you don't have housekeeping. If you don't have this, you don't, you know what I mean? Is that not the case?
Unfortunately, it's all too easy where managers will quickly just comp a night, or they'll comp half a night, or they'll give some sort of money back, or they'll waive the parking.
I got so many stories for hotels, but I only got one where the manager wasn't a pushover. I was like, did I say that right?
He was a pushover. He
was. Sorry.
So you only got one where he was.
Sorry.
That's really good.
So
that's really good.
What happened was, this was a very like high-end luxury resort, one that had like a water park in it, like very high maintenance.
Yeah.
And it was like, especially around the holidays, was like $400 a night.
Yeah.
And so this woman comes to check in. She's reserved to have like a long 3-day weekend.
Okay.
And she goes to the front desk and they're like, oh, okay, we need to put a card on file. And she goes, actually, I need to talk to you. I can't actually afford the reservation that I made. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to change the reservation? Do you want me to see if there's a less expensive room? No, I can't even afford like one full night. And he says, oh, okay. Well, do you want me to go ahead and cancel your reservation? No. I want you to tell me what you can do for me. And he just looked at her and he said, ma'am, you reserved $1,200 worth of like hotel space. 3 nights at $400 a night. I'm not understanding what you mean. What can you do to me? I can't afford one night. Well, this woman just goes off and goes, do you not understand that I drove my kids 3 hours to come to this park, and I don't understand why you can't make their kids. They deserve nice things. Do you not think my kids deserve nice things? Are you gonna tell my kids that they don't deserve nice things? Here, and she like pulls her kids to this man. Tell them that you don't want them at your water park. And this guy's like, ma'am, I'm not trying to hurt your kids' feelings. I'm not trying to upset you. I'm just saying you booked and reserved and agreed to pay this price, and now you're telling me that you can't afford it, which is fine. Yeah. Like, the world is not a nice place. Things are expensive as crap. He goes, I can't afford to take my family here, and I have an employee discount. He's like, but like, I don't understand how it's my fault that you knew the price, reserved the room, and then came here and just expected me.
It's not like it was a shock.
Right.
It's not like it was a surprise. Right. And absolutely, in a perfect world, everyone would get to enjoy all the luxuries of life, get to have a ton of fun, but at the same time, they're kids. They don't need an indoor water park in this giant hotel.
Right.
You can bring them to a place that is much more cost effective for your budget.
Right.
And they'll still have a wonderful time.
Exactly.
I mean, my parents put a sprinkler in the backyard. And I was
slip and
slide. I was the happiest kid in the world. The kids don't need that. And what's so sad is that is then making the kids
it puts them in the middle.
Yeah, they're like part of this really gross.
I know people who involve their kids like that. They made such a stink in the lobby that the manager came out, decided to give her a $50 coupon for one night and just let them have one night. Because she's like, I can't even afford one night. And he's like, what can you afford? I can afford $350. And he's like, okay, well, I can make that happen for one night. Which, like, I think is fair.
It's generous. It's very generous.
I think it's very generous.
It's very generous. And like, look, absolutely, in the hospitality industry, we see so many situations and so much happens, and there are a lot of times where your heart absolutely does ache for people, and it's really difficult because there is so much about working in hospitality and working in the front desk of hotels that will make you kind of jaded and make you very hard build a shell against certain people and the way that they'll bring issues to you looking for sympathy, primarily as a way to get compensation or get something for free. And then you have other people who they come up and they present an issue to you where they talk about their lives and their issues and their troubles. And it genuinely, like, you can tell that they're just looking to connect and they're looking for someone who can understand them and share in their experience. And that is when it's wonderful to be able to step up and do something for them to make them feel better and give them a better experience.
Exactly. But when they're just like trying to
but when you're shoving your kids and giving puppy dog eyes
and like you're purposefully trying to pull something.
Yes, it's like, think of the children. We drove 3 hours to a place we know we can't afford so we could come to and talk to this poor, probably very underpaid front desk agent and try to guilt trip them into giving us something for free.
Right. And there's a difference between having like a genuine issue at a hotel that is like something like common sense, right? And I know Jada on an earlier episode said common sense is not so common. But like, what's worse? To have them genuinely not understand it's not acceptable, or to have them do it on purpose? Like, someone sent me another story about how this woman comes down to the front desk and she just kind of looks around and she says, well, where's it? And they're like, where's what? The breakfast. Where's the breakfast? And they said, ma'am, breakfast ended at 9:30 and it's now 10:15. Well, I was doing my reading in the morning. Well, okay, that's fine, but we told you when you checked in that breakfast ended at 9:30. And she just rolled her eyes and she's okay, what am I supposed to do about food? I'm hungry. And he's, well, there's a place right across the street that I love. It is a little diner place. I go before work, I go after work. It's delicious, it's affordable. So like, I recommend that place, but here are some other recommendations around as well. She's okay, whatever. So she goes and she comes back an hour later, livid, and she's, I need to see the manager now. Okay, so manager comes in, ma'am, what can your employee recommended that restaurant across the street and I didn't like it. And I spent money on that. So I need that bill comped now. Ma'am, we don't own that. We don't own the restaurant across the street. Like, how are we supposed to comp it? Well, I want you to subtract that total of my bill over there from my bill here because I didn't like it and your employee made me go there. Ma'am, she did not make you go there. She recommended it. And this woman just would not let up and was just convinced that this hotel had to come for breakfast from down the street.
That
off
is
her bill.
why it is so important, and like why I always, and not that this hotel boy did anything wrong.
Right.
In no way, shape, or form. That woman, no, you are not getting your food cost because you didn't like the breakfast. But anytime I ever told guests anything about, especially anywhere off property, I always made sure to slip in there like, not a guarantee, like they'd be like, where's a great place to go for dinner? And I'd say, oh, I like this place, but just it's not a guarantee they're going to have availability, or it's not a guarantee that
you'll find something
you like on the menu. Like they serve this kind of food. I'm not sure.
That's a good tip. That's really interesting. Yeah, I like that.
It's balancing being able, because a lot of hotels have done is concierge and front desk used to be entirely different roles. The front desk handled check-ins, checkouts, and room issues. Concierge helped with recommending places to go, booking dining reservations, booking maybe tickets for attractions and things like that. And now a lot of hotels have merged the two because frankly, people don't know the difference.
Right. Yeah.
You know, people walk in, they'd be like, concierge, front desk,
what is that? What is,
I'll just go to one of them and they're going to do what I want.
It always makes me think of The Office and they're like, they have a concierge. She's like a wizard.
A wizard. Exactly. And so it's a fine balance now because a lot of front desk agents are put in the place of also being concierge. You are expected to know the local area and give recommendations. And when I worked at Disney, a lot of the times I also was in charge of helping to make dining reservations and other types of booking. And I had to know not only about my property that I was working at the time, but I had to know about the offerings at other properties because there are wonderful restaurants at every single hotel at Walt Disney World. And then, of course, I had to know about the restaurants in the parks and the different attractions and things. So you have to have a lot of knowledge. And I would always constantly have to tiptoe my way around recommending something and being honest with that recommendation, and also trying to get across the point that I am not taking responsibility for your experience with that. It's a very difficult game with that, and I know it's going to be so fun whenever we do get around to making a video specifically about my experience working at Disney.
Yes. That's a whole different realm.
The difference between, there's so many similarities, of course, to working in a hotel at Disney
and
working at a regular everyday hotel, that it's way too much for just one video. So next time.
Yeah. As a front desk employee, what were you responsible for? Like, what do you do? Because I know there's so many people that are like, oh, they just sit behind a desk all day. But like,
so that is very fascinating, because it depends highly on the type of hotel that you work at.
Okay.
So when I was in school for hospitality management, before I got a job at a hotel, I interviewed someone who worked at a hotel. He was, I think, a rooms director. And I asked him about getting into the industry, all those things. And he told me that he recommended that I actually, because at the time he was working for one of the Rosen hotels that's local to Orlando, giant 1,000+ room hotel. He said that he recommended starting out at a smaller boutique hotel, because you actually, as a front desk agent, usually have a lot more responsibilities at a small hotel versus a large hotel. Because at a very large hotel, you usually have a much larger team. So at the front desk of the convention hotels I worked for, I primarily was just checking people in and checking people out. And people might come up to me and say, hey, there's something wrong in my room. And I would send in a service order or radio in. But when I worked at a very small boutique hotel, I was obviously checking people in and out, but I was also taking in-room dining orders. The phone would go off and I'd have to take the order, and I'd have to go run it over to the waiters in our restaurant and say, hey, there's a room service order for you. And I also was in charge of assigning rooms, which at larger hotels, usually there is a team that assigns the rooms for you or fills those spots, and you have a lot less control over that. And at the smaller hotels, eventually too, I moved into doing the overnight audit, where I was in charge of balancing all aspects of the front desk, all the accounts for the restaurants, for anything we sold that day. We had an art gallery. So that's another thing too. The front desk agents sold art out of the gallery in the hotel, in this tiny little boutique hotel. Like and there were only 2 of us at a time at that front desk, because it was only 100 rooms. So at any time, there were 2 front desk agents, and the managers were usually in the back.
So you don't just sit behind a desk all day.
At that hotel, I did. Honestly, that boutique hotel was such a horribly toxic work environment, and I absolutely should not have stayed there as long as I did, but I did, because I actually got to sit at the desk. All the other hotels I worked at, you had to stand all day. But this desk, it was a sitting desk. Like, I literally got to sit behind a desk for my job, and the guests would come in and I would invite them to take a seat while I checked them in.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was so nice. The only thing that would get kind of awkward is some guests didn't want to sit down, so they're like looming over me, and I'm in my chair like,
hey, hi,
where are your room keys? This is where you're going to want to go for that. Have a great day. It was really awkward.
Well, so you know, because you just know my content, because we're like actual friends. So you know that we talk a lot about how in every profession, there's always bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us. And you were just talking about how this boutique was such a terrible place to work. So I need to know some examples of hotel staff that really just shouldn't be there. Like, how are they making the industry and your workload so much harder and just being terrible in the workplace?
One of the most what are you doing? I can't believe you said that stories. We had a bride come and have her wedding at our hotel. I worked at a gorgeous boutique hotel. It was part of the Marriott Autograph collection. So it was like
pretty.
Oh, it was gorgeous. It was a very lovely hotel workout. So people had weddings at it all the time. And then usually the wedding party stayed at the hotel.
Right.
And this poor bride, she's, of course, it's a very very hectic day for her.
Right.
These couple days are going to be some of the most stressful and wonderful of her entire life. And everyone was checking in that day. And she came up to my coworker, and I was out in the back at the time. This was during night audit. So it was just me and one other person. And this guy was very new to his job. And he was primarily working as, this hotel was so weird. He was our security guard, but also trained to check people in the front desk as a desk agent.
Okay.
Those personality types don't usually match.
Yeah.
Plus, very
I get that.
service.
You want your security to be like a little scary.
Yeah,
and you want your front desk. You want like security to be like back of the house. You want front desk to be front
I'm the Disney princess. He's the evil, villain next to me.
Yeah.
You need that vibe. And I was out in the back, probably doing something in the back office for a little bit, and I come out and I hear him looking at the bride and saying, well, what do you want me to do about it? What do you expect me to do? Well, what do you want me to do about it? Because I think what had happened is that her mother was supposed to have a very nice suite, like one of our balcony suites that was going to overlook the reception area. So she was going to have, I think she was low mobility, so she wasn't going to be able to make it for the entire reception, but she wanted to be able to see it from the balcony and still feel like she was part of it. And she wanted to be able to look up and see her mom looking down at her during her reception. And something had happened, and his mom had ended up in the wrong part of the hotel overlooking the driveway. So not looking out towards the back where the reception was. And she was like, I need you to move the room. And he was like, I can't do that. She was like, but we paid for this room. We reserved this room. It's part of the contract that we're supposed to have a room with the balcony that overlooks the reception. Like, what do you mean? And he was just like, well, we don't have it, so I can't do anything about it. What do you want me to do about it? And I was like,
no.
So I came zipping around the corner and I was like, go away. And we got it all figured out for this poor bride, but she was...
That's like the last thing she should be worrying about.
Hysterics. Like she was like that bubbly cry that you do where you're like... like she was doing that. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is number one, so awful for her as a person. But number two, this is a very high paying guest. Weddings bring a lot of money to hotels, and they are like VIPs, and especially the bride and groom should be your V-est of VIPs. And
he was just like, it's fine, I don't care.
Literally. And she was like, how are you going to fix this? And he was like,
I'm not.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
He's like, I don't know how to fix it. What do you want me to do for you? Like, what do you want me to do to fix it? And she was like, I want the room I paid for. And he was like, well, I can't do that. So what else do you want? That's not the way you talk to guests.
Even if he was convinced there was nothing he could do, that's not how you speak to somebody.
That's not how you speak to
that's
someone.
just rude.
Yes.
And it's not like the bride was being crazy or ridiculous or anything. No. She's just like, what do we do? How can we find a solution?
Yes, like, help me with this. Like, this is incorrect.
Absolutely not.
There is a huge difference between advocating for yourself and being a Karen. And I think that too often people think that anyone who goes up and firmly tells someone that that there was a mistake, that equals they're a Karen.
No, that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
And unfortunately, especially with people like him, you have to put your foot down and get a little bit hysterical and shrieky and classic Karen, because they're not listening. It's not getting through. You have to, and you absolutely can and should advocate for yourself. I think that I think what we ended up doing for her is that we figured out something had gotten mixed up in one of her other bridal party.
Got the other room, so you just switch it. Okay.
So we coordinated and we were like, hey, we got to switch this around. And we were able to.
And I'm sure they were more than happy to do that.
That's all it took, was a little bit of extra effort and showing empathy. And I think that is the hardest thing because, and I'm certainly guilty of this, it can be really hard to show empathy because sometimes you worry that equals weakness and that you're going to be taken advantage of.
Yes. Because that is something to always be concerned about in these kinds of jobs. Yes.
It is, absolutely. But you can empathize with the guest and, bring it down to earth with them and still maintain your power.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And it just takes practice. And if there is any job, like I'm still not really a fan of confrontation, but I used to be scared to pick up the phone and make a phone call, or a guest would call me and I'd be like,
Hi.
Oh, this is Jessica at the front desk. How can I help you? And now I feel much more confident in the way that I speak to guests and the way that, and it's all a learning curve. I had someone message me through Facebook and she said that she really wanted to start working in hotels. Actually, I think she said she had just got hired, but she was really nervous because she's like, I don't really know anything about it. So I don't know, but she's like, I watch your videos. I was like,
Oh, thank you.
I was like, that's a good start. She's like, I watch your videos, so I kind of have an idea of what to expect, but I'm really nervous. And I tell her, I'm like, look, the thing about the videos that we put online and the content we create, it's a small sliver.
Yes. Like
of what
most
really
of the
happens.
parents I dealt with as a teacher, most of the guests that you deal with as a front desk person, they're positive, if not completely neutral interactions.
And that truly is, I think the thing is, like, if you look at it on a scale or like a fill up a glass, you know, it's primarily neutral,
Right.
with a little bit of exceptionally wonderful
Right.
guest interactions.
Yes.
And then there's a little tiny bit of, you know, the crazies.
Yes.
The Karens that are thrown in. And I've made some wonderful connections with guests. I had guests who I would speak with them and your heart would feel so full, or I would get to do something for them and I would make their day and they would remember me. They would be so excited to come back and talk to me and share their experience with me and share their lives with me. And that is what I miss about the job, is I miss making those connections.
That's so
I
sweet.
loved making connections with guests. I was looking through my comments recently and someone commented that I checked their son into All-Star Movies Resort, and I don't remember, she didn't say if he recognized me and if like we had the connection of like, I know you from social media, but what I can be happy and confident in knowing is that regardless of whether he recognized me, I was certainly my most happy, bubbly, sweet self, because I loved welcoming people to the hotel. Because a lot of times that's your first stop on any trip, on any vacation. Your first stop is your hotel. That sets the tone for the
really
rest of
does.
your experience wherever you are and with whatever you're doing. And being able to be that person who brought like that welcoming aura was everything for me as a front desk agent. I loved it. I really did. A really bad manager story. I never liked this manager.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
This was at one of the larger hotels I worked for, so there were a lot more higher ups. We had a few supervisors, we had an assistant like front desk manager, we had a front desk manager, and then we had our front desk director. And usually our front desk director, he was our like personality guy. He was
The personality hire. Yeah.
personality hire, but also he was the person you went to with like every time he would sit down for our briefing before our shift started, he would usually ask us like, what's going on with your life? What's new with you? And it was very nice because it was a way to connect,
That's
to
really sweet.
make those personal connections. Anytime we wanted vacation time or we had a scheduling conflict, because most of us were in college, so anytime anything like that came up, we would go to him and say, hey, can you help us with this? And he was wonderful, one of the best managers I ever had in my entire life, loved him to death. Well, the hotel ended up acquiring another property right next door. And they wanted him to be the one to help facilitate opening it.
Gross.
So he put the front desk manager in charge. The front desk manager, we all joked, was born in a suit. He was very stiff. He was very unpersonable. It worked.
the worst.
It worked very well for him as a front desk manager because he was very good about keeping people on task and making sure that the flow was happening. And he was great at his job when you came to him and needed like assistance with a guest issue. But if you needed life assistance, if you needed sympathy, if you needed any sort of personal connection or
Right.
assistance, he was not that guy. But he was made to be that guy because our director had to go and do the opening at the other hotel. And the second he took over, everyone just was like, this is the worst thing in the world. And there were a couple things he did that just made me so upset. Quite a few of us were just kind of done with him.
Right.
One of the things that happened was that nearing finals, usually what would happen is you would have like your regular class times, and I would tailor my schedule, my availability around my semester's class times. And then when finals were announced, they sometimes fell out of those usual class blocks. So what we would need to do is we would need to submit a form saying, hey, I need this adjustment to my schedule for the testing period.
Right.
Well, lucky me, none of my exams actually fell out of my normal class time.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I didn't need to submit a form. So I was like, great, this is awesome. The schedule comes out and I'm working 8 days in a row during finals, because the way that the schedule bled over, I was working like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday
Oh, no.
of the next schedule. And I went into his office and I was like, you scheduled me 8 days in a row during finals. This is not going to happen. Like, this is not possible.
Yeah, no.
And he looked at me, he said, well, you didn't ask for anything special with your schedule. And I said, that's because I didn't need any accommodations, but I'm in college. Like, I'm still a student.
Like, you're still changing up my schedule. Like, I didn't ask for anything to be different with my normal schedule.
And the thing is, this would happen all the time.
Is that even legal?
This hotel did a lot of illegal things.
Okay, yeah.
So many things in hindsight. I'm like, that was legal. Like, and there actually was one moment I confronted him about something else. We'll get to that in a second. But I told him, like, that's not possible for me.
Yeah.
And he basically said, well, the schedule's up. There's nothing I can do about it. And I went, oh, is that how it's going to be? Okay. That the director was in that day. So I went to his office. I slapped down my resignation. And he looked at me and he was like, no. And I was like, I was scheduled 8 days in a row during finals. I communicated this. I'm being told there's nothing we can do about this. I am not.
No.
I'm like, my schooling comes before my job. And the thing is, like, this other manager would act like the job came first. He'd be like, you guys are here to work. You guys are supposed to be working. Like, born in a suit. He was like, you guys need to be dedicated to your job. Then don't hire college students. If you need people who can be fully dedicated to the job, why are you hiring college students? My director did convince me to stay that time. Well, I started learning about hospitality law in school. And this is where school does come in handy, kids. I found out that part of hospitality law and law in general says that the shift you are scheduled is a shift you work. You clock in at your schedule. Like, usually, in most cases, your schedule can be changed at any point up until the beginning of your shift. But the second you clock in for your shift, you're clocking out at your scheduled time. Not at this hotel. Constantly, they would basically like force us to stay. And we didn't know any better because we were a bunch of little college students who this was one of our first major like big girl or big boy jobs. So we didn't know. So they would sit there and we would say, hey, like, I'm going to go home. It's time for me to leave. And they say, oh, actually, no, we need you to stay another hour.
No.
And we'd be like, oh, we can't do this. Like, well, you have to. They would not give us a choice. And enough of us didn't know that until I went to college. And I found out, wait a minute, that's illegal. Because you have to get my permission. I have to consent to that. Like, if you say, hey, we need you to stay another hour, please, 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 I can say, okay. But if I say no and I leave, you cannot give any repercussions for that. You cannot retaliate for that. So I found that out. The next time Mr. Boring Suit tried that with me, he said, no, I need you to stay. I said, no, I need to go. I need to go back to my dorm. I need to sleep. I have class in the morning. He said, I'm telling you, you need to stay. I was like, I'm telling you, I cannot. And I am not going to stay because I do not have to and I do not consent. And he said, do we need to go to HR? And I said, please, let's.
Yeah, I had no idea.
And then he said, don't take a tone with me. Yeah, literally.
Okay,
I hated this. Oh, yeah, he knew what he was doing.
He knew. Oh, that's so gross. I was like hoping that maybe he was just like ignorant about it.
No, he knew exactly what he was doing. So I did leave. But then the final nail in the coffin, like, I was telling my roommate about all of this. She worked at a sister location. And she was like, my bosses are nothing like this. She's like, your place sounds like awful. And she was like, transfer to mine. And I said, I can do that? She was like, yeah, I'll email my manager right now and tell him to pull your application for the transfer. And I was like, let's go. So I put in my application for transfer. I have to go to HR to talk about why I want to transfer. And I was too nice. I was like, oh, I just want to like try out a luxury hotel instead of a convention hotel. That's the only reason I want to go. Totally not because our manager is a
doing illegal things.
Yeah, totally not because he's, awful. And they're like, okay, so they approved my transfer. Well, I still had to wait 2 weeks before I could transfer. I got the official 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, once in a while, whenever a front desk agent got a compliment from a guest, especially like a written one, they would print it out, frame it, and then they would present it to the front desk agent who did that as like a thank you. Well, Born in Suit comes over to one of my coworkers and says, "Hey, great job on what you did. Here's your," and it wasn't even framed. It was just like a loose piece of paper, like laminated. He was like, "Here is your accolade. There you go." And he walks away. We look down at it. It's not for her.
Oh my God, he doesn't even know their name.
She's wearing a name tag. It's like you couldn't even be bothered to read her name. And here's the kicker. We looked at him and we said, "Hey, this isn't hers." And he went, "Yeah, it is."
I think I know my name, my guy.
Two people there are 4 eyes between us. We can see that is not the right name. And he walked away and she was like, it's fine. I said, no, I would throw that back in his face. And like, I would shove it in his face and say, absolutely
That's not my name.
Well, guess what? He overheard me say that. Apparently, a little, tiny college student, Disney princess looking girl saying that she would throw a piece of paper in his face was like me declaring to the world that I want to beat him up.
What?
So he went running to upper management and said that he came to me and he said, "I'm running you up." And I was like, "For what?" And he said, you said this and it was extremely inappropriate. And I was like, I'm like, okay, you know what? I can level with that. Sure. It was not a very professional thing for me to say, but you're going to write me up? Like, I'd never even had a verbal warning before. And he was like, "Yeah, and this may affect your transfer." And I went,
oh no.
Oh, went right to HR. And I was like, "Hi, this just happened. My manager is trying to do this." And the HR person was like, "This is over my head," which is like, that shows you the state of their HR department, where she was like, "I don't know what to do about this." So she got
Do your job, ma'am. Do your job.
So she got in contact with my director, and my director came back because he was, of course, off at the other hotel. And I told him everything that was going on with him. I was like, "This happened." I'm like, "No one is happy with this manager. We all hate him. We all miss you. And you, by the way, are about to have," like, I'm not the only, because he was really sad when he heard I was transferring, but he was like, "I get it. You want to experience a luxury hotel over a convention hotel." I was like, I told him to his face, I was like, "It's not," I'm like, "That's part of it, sure. But apparently, I'm going to get away from him. I need to be away from that manager because he is awful and everyone hates him. You are going to lose so much staff if you keep him around." And sure enough, eventually, from actually both hotels, that one and the one I eventually transferred to, there ended up being this like mass exodus.
They didn't get rid of him?
They didn't. But I don't think that was the only reason that people quit. But the thing is, they kept hiring a bunch of college students to work at the front desk. Guess what college students do?
They leave after they
graduate.
graduate.
They leave. They go home for the summer. They find a different job. Part of my schooling, I was technically for 3 semesters in an internship class, internship 1, 2, and 3. And the goal of the internship was to work in different parts of the hospitality industry. And they really preferred that we don't stay in the same position per like each semester. Like one semester I was a front desk agent, another semester I worked at the theme park, another semester I worked at a restaurant. Like that's what they really wanted us to do.
Right.
So people leave.
Right.
They go elsewhere.
Exactly, as they're supposed to do.
So as they're supposed to do. So there ended up being like this huge mass exodus from both of the hotels that I knew about. And they did finally up the pay because no one wanted to go and apply for a job that paid them, I think at this point, like $10.50 an hour. Like a couple of years later, they upped it by a whole 25 cents. Whoa. Like, they finally raised it. And
wow.
Yeah, that hotel was a mess. And that manager was.
And they never got rid of him.
No, I think I checked their page, their official Meet the Team page, like probably a couple of years ago when he was still there.
That, I will never understand why companies just like keep bad leadership. I've gotten so many other stories of some such supportive managers, which are so
and the thing
great.
Is, when I eventually went to go interview for the little boutique hotel, the manager that I interviewed with, he talked to me about his philosophy for how he wanted to run the front desk, and the type of manager he wanted to be. And I remember at the end of the interview, I looked to him and I was like, if you do not hire me for this job, I'm going to be devastated. Not because I not because I'm losing out on this front desk position, but because I want you as a manager. I told him to his face. I was like, I want you to be my manager. You are exactly the type, like, I'm like, I
You're the
dream.
human I want.
Yeah, I'm like, I dream of having a manager like you. I was hired.
I love that.
I was hired. Oh, Andrew, miss you, love you. Like, he was
so
one of the best managers in my entire life. He was such an amazing guy. And what was so sad too is, I know he was going through some stuff. Like, as I was working at the hotel, he started coming, like, I would come in for morning shift. He started coming in earlier and earlier. Like, he didn't want to be home.
Right.
And so I knew stuff was going on, but it was one of those things where, like, it's a professional relationship.
Right.
But, like, we would still talk, and just, like, I noticed that us just having a casual conversation really helped bring him out of whatever was happening at home and brought him into that. He embodied the spirit of customer service. And he just was so fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah, so there are wonderful managers out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, the right people, it's all about having the right people.
And it's all about just, like, being a decent human being. Like, honestly, just taking 2 seconds and hearing your employees out sometimes can go such a long way. Like, someone sent me a story about how their manager just came into work looking very concerned and very, like, hesitant and confused. And after about 5 minutes, the manager called him over. Hey, I need to talk to you in the back. He's okay. What's going on? So it seems that we have a really poor review for you specifically. And it's very concerning. I need to know what's going on. Okay, what did the review say? Well, the review mentioned you being that a guest saw you drinking and being belligerent and super unprofessional, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, so I need to ask, are you drinking on the job? Because, like, I'm going to have to fire you if you are. And I need you to be honest with me because, like, I'm going to look at the cameras. But I want you to just tell me straight up what's going on. Apparently what happened is this front desk worker, one of the last customers that they checked into the hotel, went to the same bar as them 10 minutes down the road and recognized the person. They had on the shirt, but took off their name tag, took off their badge, took off everything that was identifying to the hotel, and saw this person drink with their friends off the clock. And was just so adamant that someone who's the face of a hotel shouldn't be partaking in these activities. Mind you, they're also at this bar to drink. Literally. They're doing the same things, but they've just decided that someone who is working front desk at a hotel should not be drinking. That's unprofessional behavior. And went and left this review about the...
my God.
And literally, as soon as they said that, the manager just took their word. It was like, you know what? Valid. I just believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you 100%. Because that didn't sound like you.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is, like, people, I don't know, it's always hilarious to me when people are like, I'm going to get you fired because of X, Y, and Z. It's like,
for doing my job?
Yeah, but it's also like, we've had a 10-minute interaction. I have worked with my managers for like years. They've seen me with all types of interactions. They know exactly how I am. I've had managers fully come up to me and kind of the same thing. They've been like, someone said this about you. I know that you wouldn't do that. I'm like, correct. You know?
Someone else sent me another story.
What?
Complained to the manager about discrimination. You'll like it. Trust me. So this front desk person is checking in, just a random guy. And he goes, okay, so, like, I need to see a credit card and I need to see an ID. And he goes, you need to see my ID?
Yeah.
Why do you need to see my ID?
Because I don't know who the heck you are.
He goes, well, it's just, standard policy. There's a lot of things that go into it for security reasons, for, like, you could tell me you're Gary, but I don't know, are you the Gary that reserved this room? Yeah. Like, there's a lot that goes, and that's not the only reason, there's a lot that goes into this. He goes, well, that's not really fair to people that don't have IDs. And he's, well, people have IDs. He goes, well, are you discriminating against people that don't drive cars? No, I'm not. You don't have to show a driver's license.
Yeah.
It just has to be a
government
valid form of ID. He
Yes.
goes, well, what about people that don't drive? And he goes, sir, there are a lot of different forms of ID that people can have, state-issued IDs that have nothing to do with driving. He goes, well, I just think that you're being very discriminatory against people that don't drive. He goes, sir, are you telling me that you don't have a driver's license? He goes, no, I have a driver's license. He goes, no. Well, I need to see some kind of ID. It doesn't have to be a driver's license. It can be a passport. It can be a state ID. It can be something. Yeah. I don't care. It just needs to have your picture and your name on it. He goes, well, I just don't understand why I have to show this to you. He goes, sir, we have a considerable amount of Amish individuals who come into our hotel and still have a form of ID and have no problem giving it to us. So you can either give me your ID. And he goes, well, what if I don't want to give you my ID? He goes, then I don't want to give you a hotel room.
Yeah, then you're not going to give your room.
Are you really going to refuse me service if I don't give you my ID? He said, yes. He goes, you're going to let me take my money elsewhere? He
Easily.
goes, yes.
Bye.
If you do not trust me with your ID, I don't trust you with a hotel room.
No.
So he gave him the ID, huffed and puffed about it, and then went to management and said, this guy's discriminating against people who don't have driver's license. And that was the discrimination complaint. And the manager was like, I wish I was there, man. I just wanted to watch it.
Literally just
I just wanted to watch it unfold. I told you you'd like that one.
Oh my gosh, that one's good.
And at first you hear it and you're like, oh. But then it's like, oh, no. Yeah. People are crazy.
It's always hilarious to me when like things like that come up, when people try to like play devil's advocate,
and
or
it's
they try
like,
to
what?
argue with
Like
you.
there's no reason.
And I think what's crazy too is like, you kind of like mentioned it briefly in that story, there are people who absolutely have this very similar, if not the same names. And I know many people who have accidentally checked the wrong person into like Chris Robinson. I'm just throwing that name out there. That doesn't pertain to anything. Okay?
Right.
Chris Robinson. You know, it's a very common sounding name.
Mm-hmm.
I've been guilty of this once. You only have to do it once.
And then you'll never do it again.
I had, hey, I'm Chris Robinson here checking. Okay, can I see your ID? You just take a little glance. Okay, thank you. And then make the keys, give it away. And then the next person comes in. Hey, I'm Chris Robinson here to check in. All right. And then you give them their keys. Well, then this has happened where there's two people staying with the same name. Hey, I lost my key. I don't know where my key is. Can I I need a key for my room. Chris Robinson. And they show their ID. Oh, okay. You give them the key for the wrong room.
Oh, no.
Now, thankfully, most of the time, if you don't tell them the room number, obviously they use the key on their door and they can't get in. But there have been cases where it's gotten mixed up and someone has been told the wrong room number and walked into the wrong room with like the other person in it. And that is absolutely something that the hotel should own up to. Like,
it can be a security issue.
It's absolutely a security issue.
Right.
And I do hate stories whenever, because the thing is, absolutely, I love making videos about hotel workers where they have done nothing wrong and, someone comes up and they're very belligerent towards them. But the thing is, we're all people.
We're all human beings.
Mistakes do happen.
Yes.
And if a mistake does happen, absolutely there needs to be an appropriate reaction.
Yes.
To that. Like, don't come down and start cussing someone out because they made a mistake. But you can absolutely express your disappointment and I was very scared that someone walked into my room and I had no clue who they were. That is a very valid thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the hotel needs to take proper procedure and take responsibility for that. But you only do it once.
Well, then on the flip side, because you have that's obviously a very big security issue, and you have measures in place to make sure that can't happen.
Yeah.
You don't just give out room keys.
No.
You make sure there's an ID. Blah blah blah. But then on the flip side, you get people who get so angry because one person came in and just said, "Hey, I need a key for James's room." Oh, can I have your name? Yeah, but I don't think my name's on the reservation. Okay, well, if your name's not on the reservation and he's not here with you, I can't give you a key. Well, I'm his wife. I don't know what to tell you. If your name is not on the reservation, well, in what world would me, his wife, not get access to his room. And she just kind of looked at him and said, do you really want me to answer that in front of all these people in line? There are situations where the husband would not want the wife coming up to the room, and she just looked mortified. How dare you accuse my husband? And she's like, ma'am, I wasn't accusing. I was just saying that there are reasons that this is in place, and I can't just give you a key. She goes, but I'm his wife. She goes, anyone could just come up to this desk and say, I'm the wife of this person in this room, give me a key. It's not safe. I don't understand. And if you weren't the right person and I just gave you a key, then I would have another angry, I'm just gonna do my job.
The thing is too, this was a story that was told, and I will never forget this because it was one of those stories that was told to me when I first started working at my very first hotel that really put a lot into perspective for me. This happened at the hotel to the person who was training me. Same situation. I'm his wife. Let me in. Give me a key to the room. I'm his wife. And she did have the ID with the same last name, same address on her ID that matched on file, but they still didn't give her a key because you are not on the reservation. We need to have your husband come or call and verify information.
Right. Exactly. How hard is it to just call? Because
But that's the thing. But here's what happened.
Oh no.
She started getting really riled up and really upset and started screaming. And finally, this hotel, because of how large it was, they had their own security on property, in their own little section of the hotel. They called security. Security ended up taking her aside, and they noticed some strange things about her. Come to find out, she was trying to plant illegal substances in that room because she and her husband were going through a divorce. And she wanted custody of the kids.
Oh,
and this is not, that is not, I know that is a story I'm sure you've heard because it is not uncommon. At all.
I mean, I've seen so many stories in other different professions when parents in divorces are trying to in each other. And like Sierra's story with the grandma's playroom.
Using the kid
for custody. People are gross. People are so gross. Oh my God.
That's why it's even if all the things match up,
it doesn't matter. You're not on the reservation, so they can either call or they can come up here with you. But just because you have the same last name, I don't care. You could be his twin sister. Don't care. It's not safe. You never know what's going on with people.
And
you have no idea.
And it's inconvenient. And worst of the worst case scenarios, let's say that someone left medication in their room or something along those lines. At that point, ask the hotel if you cannot get in contact with the person whose name is on the room and you insist, I promise I am in that room, ask politely and in a calm manner if maybe a security officer, one of the hotel security can come to you to the room where then you can, I know some people will, they've told me stories that their security officer will say, what am I going to see before I open the door? And it'll be you're going to see, we've put our luggage over there and there's some flowers that we placed over here and things like that. It's okay. Then you walk in.
Okay, you've been here.
You've been here, but also just in case, all right, show me something that has your identification with it. So in my example, then she could go grab her meds and show on the meds, ID, meds, the names match. These are my medication in this room. Things like that. So there are certainly workarounds, and hotel workers can try to work with you on that. But I don't know if this is going to be out before the skit gets posted, but I have a skit that I'm working on right now that is a similar situation where this woman comes in with a key and she says, "Hey, is the key still valid?" And the person's like, "Yeah, key's still valid. You can go off to the room, no problem." She's like, "Oh, okay, awesome." And silly me, what's my room number? I forgot.
Oh no.
And the front desk agent's like, "Oh, well, can I see some ID before I tell you the room number?" "Oh, well, I left my ID in the room, so I don't have my ID on me." Well, I can't tell you the room number. How about this? Let's confirm your name and some of the other information on this reservation, address, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, "Actually, never mind," and runs off.
That's so scary.
It's scary.
That's so scary.
Happens.
And people get so mad when you just do your job and
It's for your
Oh my gosh,
protection.
I can't. Well, do you think that there are any other like misconceptions about working in hospitality or working in a hotel or front desk or anything like that, other than like things that people just don't understand about like security issues and things like that, and what you actually do on a day-to-day basis?
It's hard to say, because at the end of the day, I feel like the job is pretty straightforward. You walk into a hotel, you check in, you check out. And if you actually like have ever checked into a hotel before, you pay attention to what it says. Like when you make your booking, it'll say like, here's a check-in time, here's a check-out time. I think that the funniest thing that people don't process or realize is they'll come to a hotel, like the hotel says check-ins at 3 p.m. They'll come in 11 a.m. and ask for an early check-in. And you'll say, okay, well, I'm sorry, we can't offer you an early check-in. Well, why not? Because the room's not ready yet.
There's still people in there. Checkout's at 12.
And then they'll turn around and they'll get in the room. Could we please have a late checkout at 3?
Oh, that's why there's no early check-in.
Yes.
Because everyone's doing that.
Yes, like people will do that. And it's like, there's such disconnect.
Yeah, like they're not realizing.
No,
yeah.
from the fact like that they want the late checkout, but they want an early check-in. And sometimes if you're very lucky and you're very polite, that can happen. You can get both, but it's never a guarantee.
And it always has to do with like, okay, can I get an early check-in? Are other people out of the rooms? And can I get a late checkout? Is anyone already paid for a late check-in?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Otherwise, though, it all does feel to me pretty straightforward. And I've tried to make a lot of my content where I can not only make funny skits, but educate a little bit about.
We've talked about this a lot, like educating through comedy, funny stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, I wonder who would have thought of that. Wow, who else does that? That's so weird.
So wild. That's actually a great method of teaching. Who would have thought?
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like people were teachers or something.
Oh my God.
Who does that?
Crazy. But
is there any other last thoughts or tips, tricks, thoughts, anything that you want to leave listeners with?
I always encourage, again, coming back to that point before of saying that you do need to advocate for yourself, and you need to be able to really communicate with hotel staff. Before you come to the hotel, if you have any special requirements or requests, call. Say, hey, I actually had someone message me on Facebook, and they said, thanks to your videos, I decided to call up the hotel I'm going to stay at because I had a surgery and I'm still in recovery, and I want to know if I could get a little bit of special accommodation for like having a room closer to the elevator, maybe having a room that was better, like ADA accessible, things like that, for making my experience better. And the front desk agent not only made sure that they had that, but went above and beyond and got them a couple more perks and things to help ease their experience when they were at the hotel. Because if you just call and communicate your needs without trying to
finagle,
then absolutely hotel staff will bend over backwards to make sure you have a great stay. And then once you're in the room, like we're in a hotel room right now, we noticed a little issue.
Yeah, and we just like fixed it ourselves.
We fixed it ourselves.
Like the couches, they were so different, and we were like, you know what? Let's flip them.
There was a part of me that was like gripping the edge of my seats, like watching us move this furniture around. I was like,
We can move it back. No problem. No worries at all.
Hotel worker and me like, but just communicate your needs, because this was part of my study of hospitality. There's something called the service paradox. And the service paradox says that if a guest comes in and has a perfectly average experience, nothing goes wrong, nothing really goes exceptionally right, they leave with no real lasting impression. But if something goes wrong and you fix it exceptionally, all of a sudden they leave your hotel with an amazing, glowing feeling towards your hotel. And that's why it's a paradox, because you don't want something to happen,
but you want to
guests.
be able to help them fix something.
But if you're able to fix it for them, they can have a much better lasting impression. Not to say that hotels are going out of their way ever to like make an issue happen. Trust me, contest agents are not paid
They
enough.
don't want to have to deal with it.
Not paid enough to deal with creating issues for people to experience. But understand that we want to fix those issues when they do arise, because you think about a home and all the things that go wrong in a home, you know, a light fixture or a toilet or something goes wrong. The hotels are the same. They're just a bunch of rooms, and it's a bunch of little mini homes, and things go wrong. And sometimes you have to get in.
Yeah, just like in your regular home. Like you've never called a repair guy before. Things go wrong.
Exactly. So call the front desk, ask them for assistance, let them get the issue settled for you, and don't wait until you check out and have a sour taste on your tongue. Because
they'll fix it for you. They will.
Fix it for you. They will, if they're worth their salt. You know?
Yeah.
If they're worth their salt.
Again, I hope you don't have a bad apple.
If they don't fix it for you, that's when you
get a little
you crack your knuckles and you're like, I'm going to speak to the manager.
And that's not being a Karen. That's advocating. There's a difference. There's a huge difference.
There was a skit. Last little note. There was a skit I made with that where people were like confused because they didn't really know what to think. Because for once, the front desk agent was the one that was getting put in her place because she said the room number out loud, which is a huge taboo. You do not say the guest's room number when you're giving them their keys out loud because you don't know who's listening. You don't know who can hear. It's a major safety issue. So the front desk agent did that, and the guest advocated for herself and said, absolutely not.
Did she ask to change the room?
Yeah, she said, I need you to change the room, please. Do not, I'm not going to be in this room when you announce my room number out loud. And the front desk agent tries to say, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like, there's no one here. And the woman says, no, I've been traveling for a long time. I'm a woman traveling alone. And you can tell that from my reservation because it just has my name. And I'm the only one here. Change my room number. And some people were a bit confused in the comments, but I was like, no, that's okay. That's
valid though. It's scary.
Valid.
Like, do you know how the type of little small businesses that have made a fortune on the special locks to put in your hotel door or the emergency keys? Like, because it's needed.
And
it's scary out there.
I do recommend it.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's scary out there. It is not safe.
No.
For anyone. Like yes.
Yeah. And it never. Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Better safe than sorry. It never hurts to just take that extra step if you feel you need it. Otherwise, personally, I flip that deadbolt in the door and I feel fine.
I do too.
Yeah. But everyone has their own threshold.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Of course. Next time I come in, we're gonna do our Disney episode. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, I have stories. I didn't tell my crazy hotel story today.
Yeah. We got him.
That's a little tease for next time.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today, and hope to see y'all next week. Bye, my lovelies.
Bye.